to Around Comics. 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 You're listening to Around Comics.
And 3, 2, 1.
From Chicago, this is Around Comics, the comic culture podcast, where we talk about everything in and around the world of comics and comics culture. I'm your host, Christopher Niesman, and I am joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Mr. Brian Salazar.
Happy middle of the month, middle of June.
Yeah.
Happy June
When will
Day.
this? Yeah.
No idea. Is it June?
It'll be June by the time anyone listens to this. Yes.
All right.
Wait,
June.
it's June now, isn't it? Isn't it June?
It is June. I think it's
today?
June. Yeah, absolutely. Behind the curtain, folks.
June bugs.
We're recording this in early June, and with us as always is Mr. Tom Caters.
Oh, you got a little
Sounds
fuzzy
terrible.
sound. You got
Hello,
Tom's
how are
from
you?
Mars. There he is. Do you
Hello,
have
how are you?
Do you have the IKEA furniture built yet?
I'm sitting on it right now.
It's taking another 2 weeks, and you're still
Yeah.
working on it.
I've been enjoying. Yeah, it's great. It's a great chair.
We went to the IKEA in Wisconsin, the one there on is that 41? It's
Yeah.
outside of I forget what little suburb it is. Yeah, it was wonderful. It's
Did you enjoy it?
yeah. We spent.
What'd you get there?
We got
What's
some
the
meatballs.
SKU number?
Yeah.
Give me a SKU number. I can look this up.
Yeah.
We got a throw for our chair and some meatballs and
It's on the website right now.
You got to get the Swedish meatballs. Yeah, they're delicious. It's
I will
fantastic.
not go
On the
to IKEA.
website.
Good. We looked at some. I got some cutting boards. It's
Ooh.
you go there and you don't buy any furniture, and you're like, I still spent like $100 on nothing that we needed. But that's it.
Why Amazon was created.
It is why Amazon was created, and it's also how I feel whenever I go into a comic book store, which is what we're here to talk about, is some comic books. So let's comics. Let's talk about some comics.
Comic books.
Comic books. Tom, why don't you lead us off? What have you been reading? It's so funny that I don't know if you picked that up, Sal, because we were talking about Battlestar Galactica, and Tom was sounding a little bit like a Cylon there.
Hey, maybe he
Like
is.
what?
A Cylon. You sound like a Cylon.
Oh, yeah. I am. Yeah, I am a little bit.
I'm a half Cylon on my mom's side.
Yeah. By the end of the show, we were all Cylons. That was essentially.
Sorry, go ahead, Tom. What have you been reading?
I have just coming off how much I enjoyed Mr. Miracle by Tom King and Mitch Gerards. Is that I just slaughtered his name, didn't I?
I think
How
that's
do you pronounce
as
his
close
name?
as I'm
Is
going to
that
get to it.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so I was like, which do I read next? And I saw The Vision, the by Tom King and I think Gabrielle Walta, I believe
Yes.
is what I have in here. Critically acclaimed. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm gonna like this just as much as like Mr. Miracle. And I read it, and I did not like it at all. I had this very strange. I was like, why did am I not understanding this book? Because I was like, everyone seems to love this book, and it got like nominated for things. And I was like, I don't think it. And I went to Wikipedia and read like the summary of it. Because I was like, maybe
that's the safest thing to do.
Because I was like, well, maybe I'm just like not understanding part of the story. and I'm missing some significant detail that would illuminate it. And I read through it, and I was like, no, that's what I thought. I understood. I know. I should have had more faith in myself. Yeah, I was just kind of like, I'm a little surprised that this book's gotten so much love, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. This book came out a couple years ago, and, I've always heard good things about it, and I read it, and I was like, maybe I just don't give a fuck about the vision. As Alec Holland. I'm just sort of like, whatever. You've gone through so many iterations. I don't even know what you are anymore. I don't understand it. I don't, the central problem to me was in this book, every time the people in the town were talking about the Vision and his family, like, being monsters, I was like, you're right. They are. I was like,
wow.
It's really messed up that he made these duplicates, or used, if I understood the story correctly, used Scarlet Witch to make his wife and create his family out of nothing. And
because she owed him.
Yeah, and it's like, whenever the people in the town were frightened by him, I'm like, you should be frightened by him. This is really fucking creepy. Yeah. So I could never get wrapped that. I guess I just never got that invested in them as characters, So when people are killing other characters and I was just like, oh, okay, yeah. But
they need to die.
There's no significance to me of them, in a strange way. I was sort of and the Omen was you have one of those moments where you're reading something and the story, spoilers for The Vision if you haven't read it, by the way. I don't think it's going to be a big deal, right? You start off by killing sort of a B-level character. Right, we'll just get rid of the Grim Reaper, who's a character I kind of barely know.
How dare you call that B-level?
I'm just, his name's the Grim Reaper, come on. And I'm just
it's a great costume design.
And I immediately set my warning alarms in my head off, where I was like, oh, this is how the story's beginning, is by killing off some character that there's a subset of people that'll care deeply about Grim Reaper being killed. Yeah, and then from that point on, I was just sort of okay, I understand why the people in this town are evil of them. They keep doing sort of horrible things. Maybe someone should destroy them. I just didn't like it. I didn't care about any of the characters. I still don't care about the Vision. I don't know, maybe I just have a blind spot to this character. Where I was sort of okay. I mean, I get what the story was trying to do, and it was an interesting elevator pitch, but I sort of got to the end and was that was fine. I don't think I care about the Vision any more than I did before, or about his family. I guess I didn't feel any of the sacrifice had any effect to me. I wasn't oh, wow, that's an interesting moment. I was sort of yeah, okay. Yeah. I didn't know who this character was before this started. I also don't care. It was just completely did not land with me in any way whatsoever. Yeah, so it's just sort of yeah, okay.
That's interesting. I really enjoyed it myself. I don't know. I guess I took a different. I not that I have ever give a shit about the Vision. Because I haven't either. He's one of those characters that it's whatever. He's always kind of been there, but I've never cared about that character. I never gave a shit about his relationship with Wanda. I didn't fucking care that they had kids. None of that storyline, none of the Vision ever really landed with me.
He was Marvel's Mr. Martian, or the Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, Martian Manhunter.
Yeah.
But call him by his name, John Jones.
Yes.
Have some respect.
Mike Martz.
Nice Black Hammer reference.
But I really like this, and I think I think one of the reasons, and it can be both beneficial to when you're reading it for me, and sometimes a hindrance. But Tom King, I think, puts so much of his own sort of life into these characters, his own sort of existence, and so I read some of that into this, and I guess I kind of read into it like him coming out of working for the CIA and sort of moving to Washington and raising a family and sort of just trying to be normal, when at the same time maybe dealing with some shit from that experience in Afghanistan and relating that through these characters where, the Vision is a very weird character who doesn't know who he is, doesn't really understand his own existence, I think, that well. And I think that's very human in a lot of ways. But him trying to be more human, more normal, which is what I found interesting about it, because I think I think a lot of us walk around trying to be normal. You know what I mean? Especially the older you get, families, raising a family, having a house, having kids, that kind of thing. You sort of are doing what you're supposed to do, but and I think I would think you can relate to this, Tom, of being a dad, going, oh, how do I do this? How do I be a father? Nobody's ever told me how to do this. No, there's no book I can really read. There's not an instruction manual. I'm just trying to figure this out, and I'm going to sort of fake it and hope my kids survive and they don't have to pay for a bunch of therapy when they're older. And so that's kind of what I enjoyed of watching or reading it, and just sort of from that perspective, seeing him explore this character who isn't human and wants to be, but isn't sure how to go about doing it, and is just sort of in this weird sort of almost horrific way pantomiming humanity, but he doesn't know any better, and it just sort of falls apart.
Burn him with fire.
Well, yeah, I guess. Hey, I just want to put it out there, for our future artificial intelligent overlords that are soon to take over the planet, I'm not the one saying this. That's Tom Caters. So
I'm half Cylon. We already established this.
We're all Cylons.
But I guess that's how I connected with the characters more so than you did.
I guess to me it felt like all that stuff. I felt like I never got to care about the characters before all the stuff started to happen. The instigating event happened so quickly.
Right.
It's sort of just okay, I just met this character, and I guess to me, I just never had time to actually care about any of those characters before they sort of get wrapped up in the plot points.
Right.
Of what they're doing. So I'm sort of oh, that person did that. It's okay.
Yeah, you were invested in them. You didn't get invested.
Yeah, it's yeah, that's what happened. I mean, it was very beautifully drawn. And the writing was good. It wasn't I was why is this person saying that? I just it just read. I was just one of those moments where I was genuinely confused because it got so much love, and I read it and I was yeah, that's all right. It's pretty blah type of story. On to the next thing. Yeah, that was.
But you did like his Mr. Miracle series.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. I mean, did you feel like that was kind of the same thing where it was trying to balance the I'm a crazy new god?
Well, I think it's a lot of Tom's work is that sort of idea of
amazingly powerful individual, but I've got a wife and kids and
I think
I'm trying to balance that thing.
The Vision might not be the best vehicle for that for me. I just did not like it.
So maybe Vision was the warm up to Mr. Miracle, which was ultimately more successful from a storytelling standpoint.
Well, I think the biggest difference is that Mr. Miracle has a level of levity to it that's mixed in Like the tonal differences in that book are very, like, there's really funny moments and really horrific moments.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that resonates. You know, if you're taking Tom King's personal experience, right? Like, I can see how that translates into Mr. Miracle, right? Like, that idea of, like, here is, during the day he's off fighting this war with the new gods, and then during the day he's taking care of his wife who's about to give birth, you know, right? Like, that
sure.
tonal difference between those is so, like, in a lot of ways that made it resonate more for me on that, you know. I think I respond better to humor, and I can't say that the Vision had a lot of humor in it.
Okay,
It was pretty horrific, I guess, and very sort of like, it was creepy. I thought it was creepy. Like,
oh, definitely. I think it was. It was creepy, and maybe that's I still haven't finished Mr. Miracle. I need to go back and start it from the beginning and reread it. But I didn't connect to Mr. Miracle as much as I did to Vision for some reason. Maybe I'm.
You're a robot.
I'm a robot. Yeah, I'm not. I'm cold and hard. No, I don't know. I don't. Yeah.
I just they should destroy this family. They should get rid of these.
They should burn
these monsters.
The Avengers should be stopping this. Yes, someone do something.
Burn it with fire.
They're horrible.
Yeah, this is horrifying. Someone do something. Don't just let him do this.
See, and I felt like an empathy for him because they are sort of, these creatures, but not of their own volition. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't choose to be creatures. They didn't choose to be androids or whatever they are, or synthetic humanoids, or so they're put in this situation where they have no choice and they're trying to make the best of it. And where, like, Mr. Miracle, I kind of like, well, they're putting, like, I almost feel with Mr. Miracle like he's causing the problems for himself, which ultimately we all do, but that's one of the differences between the book for me is, like, Vision is a character that didn't have a choice to be who he is, where, like, Mr. Miracle kind of made choices to put him where he is, put him in the situations that he ends up in. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the source material is so different between those two. Yeah. I mean, the Vision as a character has always been about, like, he was built, right? And there's all this ancillary shit with Ultron and all these other things, right? So, like, that's intrinsic to, like, his characters. This, like, there's been all these different versions of it, and then the Vision gets blown up, he gets rebuilt, and now he's like this, like, there's just, like, that nature of the Vision that's sort of like, what Vision is this? Like, what are we looking at? Whereas, the origin story of Mr. Miracle, like, it is sort of born out of that, like, he's sent to Apocalypse, peace offering. So in a sense, that part of him is not, he doesn't get a choice in that.
He doesn't have a choice
but his story is, like, he's the one that escapes from all that somehow, like, through perseverance, he manages to, like, emerge from that. But yeah, I mean, it's just interesting because I like a lot of Tom stuff, and I was expecting to like this, and then I got to the end and I was like, oh, I don't like this. Well, there you go. Sometimes it happens. What are you gonna do?
So, I guess segue into another Tom King book that I kind of wanted to talk about was, I don't know if either of you have read it, but Heroes in Crisis, which wrapped up this last month with a lot of people were complaining about the ending of it, and it's another book where it's like, Tom dealing with, well, a lot of it I think is post-traumatic stress disorder, and the idea of these heroes dealing with PTSD and trying to cope with all the things that they see and live with and experience. And spoilers, because if people haven't read it, it ends up being Wally West, who can't cope with his existence and the fact that mostly the fact that he came back from the dead and his family didn't come with him, and how to deal. He doesn't know how to deal with that. Like his children have been erased from existence, and he's been brought back, and he's trying to sort of cope with that, and it ends up in really kind of a horrible, dark thing in the book. But a lot of people were like pissed off about it and like angry and like because he used Wally in that way, and a lot of what I read about people talking about it was like, well, he doesn't even know this character. Why did he use this character? He doesn't even know Wally West. Why would Wally? And I get so kind of tired of that fucking argument when people don't like a book, like saying that it's bad because the character does something out of character, which is kind of a ridiculous statement for characters that have been around so goddamn long and have had so many writers. Like the idea that a writer doesn't, that a character doesn't act like the way he's supposed to act is sort of silly at this point. Like, no, that's the way he's acting now. That's the writer was paid to write that character. That's how that character is acting right now, and it doesn't necessarily change how he chose to act in the past, and it doesn't mean that's how he's going to act in the future. But right now, that's how that character acts, and people writing and talking about this book like it's horribly written because the character does something out of what they're used to is just such a bizarre thought to me. But I like the idea that Tom's sticking with the same sort of theme of like these characters coping with their existence, which I find interesting. I don't know. So superhero comics in this day and age, a lot of them are pretty boring to me. Like your basic sort of superhero comic of good versus evil is kind of bland. I don't think there's that many that are out there that are very good, but I find his stuff interesting because he deals with like the idea of like, well, what would it be like to not just be a superhero, but be a superhero in a ridiculous existence where you come back from the dead and your family's no longer in existence and just disappear, and your friends, you're to blame for it. Your mentor, your hero, the guy that you looked up to, is sort of to blame for it. How would that affect you? I think that's an interesting, at least, idea, and then to kind of wrap that into an exciting comic book, I think is pretty ambitious. But I know you had some ideas on it, Tom, too. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think sometimes using the word crisis packs so much emotional baggage into doing something, right? Like that. I found the story very ambitious, right? And I do think like that point of view of like what it's like to live sort of that, what would happen if you came back from the dead and your family didn't come back? It's very interesting. I think the problem with it, in that it was sort of struck me as strange, it sort of lives in that in-between space between that ambitious goal and still sort of filling what a crisis story is, right? It's like all these characters died, right? You still have the trappings of, what does a crisis at DC mean? It means like all these characters died. Like, so you're kind of like, to me, the story kind of felt like it lived in both spaces, which I don't think did the ambitious portion of it the justice. Like having to sort of fit in like the mist who killed all these people, like was almost sort of like not diminishing the ambitious portion of it, but like felt like it was in service of like a different thing. Like this is
we
what
have to make crisis. A crisis.
Yeah, like it kind of felt like it lived in between those two things, and I think like if it was freed from having to be called a crisis, and live with that baggage of what that means, like whether like what fan expectation is of that. I think it could have been better. And I'm not saying that it's bad, because I found it interesting. I just think like it lived in a strange space that didn't quite like work exactly the way I wish it would have.
No,
like,
I see
it just
what you
sort
mean.
of like it kind of had the trappings of one thing, and like it was like not wholly of that ambitious nature. Like there's still those things that were like who did this? You know, all the time spent with that, right? To like land on the culprit, you know, being Wally West. It just felt of two worlds, you know, like trying to combine those things together into one type of story.
Yeah, there may have been like he was doing the best with what he was given, you know, the confines of what he could work within, because it's like, hey, it is a crisis, so we have to kill a bunch of people and like you said, make it sort of a murder mystery, which is interesting that the crisis has become sort of that, where it's like it's a, you know, it's a murder mystery. That's kind of what those books have been, at least for you know, but I mean, I guess in the same point, like you kind of know that going into it, right? Like you so to sort of complain, and I'm not saying this about you, I'm just saying more the online sort of complaining. To complain about it at that point, about it being what it is like, well, I mean, it is a crisis book. Like, what do you expect?
The thing about living in sort of two spaces, I think, is separate from like the whether Wally, character or whatever, you know, like.
I know what you're saying though, because there is sort of like the construction of it is that manufactured sort of thing, where like he's building up that anticipation for the eventual whodunit moment, and that almost takes away from the idea of what would it be like for a hero to go through what Wally's going through.
In a little way, it felt sort of like, like they didn't work together as well as they could have.
Right.
You know, in a sense, to like be like, oh, land sort of like what you're aiming for with that ambitious point of view. But it's sort of married to like, you know, it's interesting, right? Like in such a weird way, you know, Crisis on Infinite Earths is like this thunderclap that we still hear decades later, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you know, what do we talk about? We talked about the Vision. How does the Vision start? It starts by killing off like a B-level character that some people love, right? Like that's such a thing that, you know, like I just recently reread Crisis on Infinite Earths, right? And like that whole beginning where Earth C gets destroyed. B-level characters getting murdered right at the start, so you know it's serious, right? Like it's so weird to me that we still it's interesting, right? It has like it's such a template, like for what we as comic book fans expect like a world-changing event to feel like, right? And like it's shifted over the years, right? And you're right, it has become more like murder mystery, right? But there's still like that echo of that construction of like this story, you know, this story is serious because we're gonna kill off all these characters, right? And like it's so interesting to me that structure,
because if in the X-Men if they kill a Morlock, things are serious.
It's just interesting, like how that structure has just survived for so long, and it's still like.
But do you think it's limited to comics? I mean, I think you see that in really anything. No. Like, you know, that's why quite honestly, it's why there's the complaints of women in refrigerators. It's not just comics, though. It's movies and TV shows. Like, well, we need the audience to be invested. Murder is the ultimate, you know what I mean? Like, having someone murdered brutally is how you get people interested. I mean, it just, you know, that's one of those ways.
It just so happens comics has an endless series of B characters that you can fucking
really
decimate.
Should happen. It should happen more. It should happen more on shows like SVU, because I want most of those characters to die.
Well, Well, I will give Tom King credit for Grim Reaper. At least it's, I mean, there is a relationship. He is Simon Williams' brother.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
Simon Williams was what Vision was originally brained, whatever. But, so at least there was that. But I know what you mean. Like, there is that, it almost is like, oh, okay. They're not, they're not giving me anything, really unique or interesting here because you're just following that same.
I mean, like the setting is interesting, the resolution is interesting,
right?
But like the instigating event is almost sort of like that is what happens in a crisis. And maybe that could be brilliant, right? Because it works. It's a crisis.
Yeah.
So like it fits within that, but at the same time, it's sort of like part of me is sort of like, man. The DC's sort of their emotional attachment to crisis as a word and what that means, I think sometimes isn't always like beneficial, right? Like to what they're trying to do all the time, right? Like that's the word's so packed with stuff for them, storytelling wise. Not just like emotionally, but like what that means is like that.
It's almost to the point that it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean,
it's a brand.
I found it is a brand.
Didn't they already did Final Crisis? So I mean, what the fuck?
What
right?
the fuck are we doing? Yeah, why do we keep doing these? But yeah.
I think it's just it's almost like an exercise now. Like, okay, we need a crisis. How do we do another crisis?
How do we do another crisis? What do we do with another crisis?
Who wants to take a shot at it?
I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was very ambitious. I also sort of feel like I don't know exactly how I feel about it yet. And I feel like I need more time to think about it.
Beautifully drawn.
Yes.
Beautifully drawn. One of the best, I think, drawn superhero comics of the year. I personally, I think it's absolutely gorgeous. But and I found it interesting. I enjoyed it. I thought it was an interesting. I think it's a little it's a little tough to get through to some degree, but I think I don't know. I thought it was incredibly ambitious for what it was trying to do and deal with. And maybe it came up short, but I said this. I think I said this online. I'm like, I'd rather have like amazing failures than mediocre consistency.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which is we get a lot of mediocre
take a big swing.
Yeah, take a big swing and you miss. But it's like other than like a bunt.
You just described Grant Morrison.
Well, yeah, he does take a lot of big swings.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. But, sometimes he hits home runs.
Mm-hmm. And I don't even know if I don't like it. I'm just sort of like, I did like it, I think. It's just like, it's like one of those books I might have to like sit a little while and think about how I actually really felt about it. Like,
I think that's the mark of a good book, though. I mean, if you can't just kind of get through it and go, or I did like it or I didn't like it, maybe, sometimes it's something that makes you chew on it a little bit.
Good book, good movie, where you come back and you're like, I'm still thinking about that. That's a good sign.
And now
Ernest goes to camp.
Still thinking about
I've been thinking about
30 years.
Still chewing on that movie for years and years.
And now, what do you guys think about Tom King co-writing the New Gods TV show?
That's cool.
Sure,
that's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
good for him.
Good for him.
All right, enough about that bastard.
Yeah, we talked about that. Jesus Christ.
We are old. I determined by reading this book. We are old because the comics that came out whenever we were in our 20s are now being rebooted and reimagined. And as well, did you guys? This is my latest late to the party inclusion. Have you read The Wildstorm?
No.
No.
Did Tom King write it?
Yeah, Tom King did not write it.
Oh, okay.
This is Ellis, right?
this little known guy named Warren Ellis. He used to be a thing back in the day. It's Warren Ellis reinventing or rebooting the Wildstorm universe because I guess Jim, I read the afterword and Jim Lee wrote him a really slobbery message. It's like, Warren, you're the only guy that can do this, and we're gonna put this in your hands, and it's up to you. And it is everything that I love about comics. It's sci-fi and espionage, and it hits those beats for me. Knowing your guys' style and what appeals to you, this is my kind of comic. It's almost tailor-made for me, and I've through 13 issues of the relaunch, and have loved absolutely every one of them. Give me sci-fi, political intrigue, and espionage, and I'm fucking just happier than a gopher in soft dirt.
Are they happy? Is that happy? I don't know if I'm not sure how to interpret that.
Yeah.
Colloquially. Is that a Wisconsin colloquialism?
No, it's very Southern Illinois. The other cool thing about it is, it's very nostalgia ridden because, all of the characters are it's almost like alternate universe versions of the Wildstorm characters that we read in the early 90s, whenever Jim Lee, it's his Wildcats team was. Right. Yeah, so it's Jacob Marlowe, who is, kind of the little person, and Grifter and Zealot and Void. I'm trying to think. So it combines them with the Stormwatch characters that would eventually become the Authority, and the Wild. So you get
Wildstorm.
It's the Wild Storm.
It's a storm.
It's a storm of Wildstorm characters.
It's a storm of wild.
So you get a new Jenny Sparks. You get John Lynch, who was the head of Stormwatch. In this version of the universe, this relaunched universe, Stormwatch is now IO. It's the intelligence organization that runs everything Earthbound, and then there's it gets complicated whenever you look at the comparables from the old universe. I guess Stormwatch is now Skywatch, which controls everything in space, and it's so you have the characters from the old Wildstorm universe have been reimagined, relaunched in this universe, and I assume they're going to keep going on and moving forward. I hear that there is a new Wildcats miniseries that's going to come out of this, but it's nice to see old characters like John Lynch and Grifter and Zealot and all of those characters that I enjoyed in the 90s, and then in the early 2000s, whenever they kind of started to reimagine the series, even the post-Alan Moore Wildcats, where they went into when Brubaker did Sleeper, all of those characters came out of this kind of shared universe, and it's neat to see them reimagined and relaunched. So check out the Wildstorm.
Do you like? I haven't read that stuff since the 90s. Do you need to sort of?
Nope.
No, you're good. Just going in straight in.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Doctor Who relaunch in TV, where it's like if you were an old school fan of the TV show, there was another layer that you would appreciate, but the majority of the new fans of that TV show probably never watched any of the 70s, 80s, or early 90s versions of that character and appreciate it just as well, if not even more so. So there are some neat nods to the 90s versions of the series and those characters where there's some, it's like, ooh, I know who that character is.
Right,
but
right.
if you don't, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's Warren Ellis is a pretty good writer, and he doesn't have to. He's good. He's good. He doesn't have to rely on the nostalgia of the old characters to write a good story. You can jump right in. You don't have to remember who Void is. Because it's reimagined. So they all get kind of new origin stories anyway. So, I mean, if you see Jack Hawksmoor and you were a big fan of the Authority, then that's kind of a little mini payoff for you. Right. But if you never read the Authority, it lays it out for you and explains what his powers are. And they've changed a lot of things. So it's not everyone has the same powers or the same backstory. So yeah, it's fine. You don't have to have been a Wildstorm, aficionado.
Devotee.
The four of us out there in the world.
A Wildstorm chaser.
I think I got a letters page. The letters page title right there. Wildstorm Chasers. Storm Chasers.
Nice. Storm Chasers. So I know that this is probably up my alley more than your guys's because it checks a lot of the boxes of what I like in a superhero / espionage.
I have to admit, espionage is one of those genres that I have a hard time with. I don't know why. I don't enjoy that much of it.
You don't like lying. You don't like lying.
That's probably it. I'm a very honest. I'm a very honest guy.
Why won't this spy just tell them who he is?
Yeah. Why is he gonna hide? I don't know why. I think it's like it gets too complicated. Like I either want like character driven stuff or plot driven stuff, and like with espionage, it's plot driven, but the plots always get so intertwined. Like I got to pay attention to like 4 different groups of people doing different machinations.
I'm understanding why you didn't like reading Good Omens.
Yeah, that's what I like. I got to sit here and fucking figure out what all these different groups of characters are doing and nonsensical.
I need a wall with pictures and string fuck
that shit, man. Just tell me a story. God damn, I don't know how I ever got through Game of Thrones, quite honestly, because that's so that. But I don't know. I guess some stuff I like, but some stuff
there is. It is funny because there is a scene where one of the characters, Jenny Sparks, the new Jenny Sparks, is trying to figure out what is going on, and one of the other characters goes to her residence, and she has one of those walls with the pictures and the newspaper clippings and all of the the yarn with the thumbtack, all that,
psycho.
And it's like, okay, so you're a little fucking insane. It's that moment. It's like, oh, so you're that person.
Now, did he use it as exposition, though? Did he use it to sort of like catch you up on the story, or was it just a moment of the character?
No, that was a true character moment. He only used exposition hard like twice. And it's one of those things that now in comics and thankfully they've kind of outgrown that. You still kind of smell it like a fart in a car when someone is using heavy exposition. I picked up the new Star Trek season, is it season 5, whatever the fuck they called it. It's the original crew.
Old fuckers. Star Trek old fuckers.
It's year 5, and there was like 2 fucking pages of exposition where I was like, this is the laziest written comic ever. and Ellis is a better writer than that.
Yeah,
So.
I wasn't using it as a negative. I mean, I think there's ways to use exposition to help tell a story, and then there's ways where you just you don't know how else to tell the story.
Just vomit a bunch of stuff on page, and it's like, there you go.
I think exposition, sometimes people attack it like it's, you should never have exposition. It's like, well, that's not always.
No, that's not true. It just shouldn't be lazy.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
I just thought maybe that was an actual moment of clever exposition where it's like, oh, here I'm going to catch up on what's going on by showing you this character trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, that that's kind of a little better.
No, it wasn't even that. It was literally the other character seeing this and going, oh, so you're a little bit of crazy.
You're a little crazy.
If you are a DC Universe subscriber, they have the first 13 issues are available.
Oh, all right. Well, it's on Hoopla too. I just was looking, so
there you go.
I'm gonna get the first
Hoopla.
Hoopla. I love Hoopla.
And it's straight up Ellis. I mean, it's straight up Warren Ellis.
Now, what happened to Warren Ellis? Because he kind of hasn't been doing a lot of stuff for the last handful of years. I know he was working on some TV stuff, but I had heard something did he have something happen health-wise with him?
The one time I met him in person, which was probably fucking almost 10 years ago, he looked like fucking death then.
Well, he's looked bad. I mean, I don't think he's ever looked good.
No, it's like, how are you still fucking alive? Because smokes and drinks and he looked like death warmed over 10 years ago. So
I thought I had heard something about he had something brain related, but I don't know. I'm speaking out of school, so I don't really know.
Out of school. I don't know. But he wrote this and it was good, and it's 24 issues. I don't know how many they're done with, but that's what it's supposed to go to. So I'm on issue 13. It's all good.
Nice.
Yeah. So how do you guys feel about those 90s comics that are now we're seeing reimaginings of the shit that was out whenever we were young adults?
Yeah, it's a little weird, realizing that I'm old and constantly being reminded of it. It's a little odd, seeing music is classic rock that it was I don't know, seeing all the things that I grew up with being old, and just my kids don't even know what they were or what it was. But at the same time, everything that we had as kids is coming back or still being redone, whether it's Star Wars and all the superhero stuff. So it's an odd time for sure. But yeah, getting old. The comics, I'm not paying that much attention. I mean, to stuff that's 90s. I don't know. I don't fucking. I didn't read that much stuff in the 90s. I don't think anyway. For a lot of reasons, not because of the quality of the books or anything, but I don't know that I want to go back to a lot of that stuff.
Well, that was the nice thing about this relaunch, is that it's not there were a lot less pockets in this one.
Yeah.
So it was. It took, and that's my snarky way of saying it took away a lot of the cheesy '90s aspect, the goofy '90s aspects of this, and it updated it and put it in a much more modern telling of those same characters, and just kind of relaunched it and reimagined it. That's how it should be. It shouldn't be absolutely tied to the past. It's nice to be able to take those the core of those characters, what you enjoyed, Grifter is always going to be Grifter. I mean, that's kind of who that character is, but you can put a slightly different spin on that character and not have him be absolutely tied to what he was previously. And so I like it whenever they do that. And I think that the Wildstorm universe offers almost not a unique opportunity, but it has roots that are just deep enough that people have some nostalgia with it, but they're not so deep that it's like Spider-Man or Flash or Superman, Batman, whatever. They're known quantities, but not sacred.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
If I had the time and energy, I would start a comic book universe of characters that, like, every 20 years, and this would be like part of the mythology of the characters, there would be superheroes, but like every 20 years they would die and be reborn.
Yeah.
So that they would just like start over, and it would just be like it would be like Mantle Comics. So it was just like you had your all your superheroes, and every 20 years, like they would all just die and be reborn as, brand new. The same characters, mantle. But with the same mantle, so you'd have a new Superman.
DC
years.
Was really kind of good about doing that.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah,
honestly, they worked
for a while.
For a while, and then it's like that's what I loved about JSA, and I never would have read the JSA if it wasn't for Tom, and I loved the kind of discovering the idea of the mantle, which was a new concept for me after reading comics for 20 fucking years. It's like, oh, this is cool. It's like, oh my gosh, this is there are other characters that had the same name, and you get to go back and that's what made that series so cool, is that there was a reverence for what had come before. And looking at it from the outside, that was totally Jeff Johns and his love of the comics that he grew up on, right?
Yeah. He's still doing that. No, yeah, I just think it's, because we get so caught up, comic book fans get caught up in like the idea of like, oh, well, these characters are this thing, and it's like, no, they're just this thing for a little while, and then there's something else. But like Batman is bigger than any decade that Batman's been around. You know what I mean? Like that, the character Superman or the character Batman or Spider-Man or the Hulk or Captain America or whoever it is, like those ideas can change and be something fresh to the next batch of kids.
Thank God Hal Jordan doesn't sell insurance anymore.
Yeah, or he's not a toy salesman. Just the other one.
I just think we get caught up in it. Like, I think the companies get caught up in it too. Of like, it can only be this thing, or the writers get caught up in like it can only be this this iteration of it.
Isn't it neat how different media affects the core of the characters? Because you look at stuff like Into the Spider-Verse or the Spider-Man PS4 game, and how that ends up, or obviously the movies, and how that ends up influencing and changing the comics. And I think that even the source material needs that outside influence to say, you know what, you've looked at this character the same way for so long, and here are these influences from outside to remind you that it can change, it can grow and evolve and change and be different than what it's been on paper for a long time.
Well, or guys like Alan Moore, we talked about in the last episode, with jumping, like going, yeah, no, this is stupid. Let's change it into something completely different and see if we can make something better out of it, not be beholden to what came before. And I think it's a fine line. I'm not saying you reinvent every character every once in a while, but Like,
yeah. Well, I look at Dan Slott came into Spider-Man, and I think that he absolutely embraced the Ditko Stan Lee era Spider-Man, and it's like I want to embrace that and tell stories like that. And then you look at like Grant Morrison that goes into X-Men with his X-Men, and it's like X-Men's been boring for a really long time. We're gonna fucking throw it in a blender, turn it upside down, and throw it up, against the wall, and it's gonna be completely different. And I respect both of those things, but I also see the problems in both of those, because Grant Morrison's new X-Men run was amazing and horrifying at the same time, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't find it horrifying, but
it's maybe not horrifying under his watch, but kind of the aftermath of it. It's You know what
that's
I mean?
always going to be a problem, because when you have somebody that's like, they're going to do something visionary, then it's like, okay, well, how do you follow that up? Do you keep trying to go down that road? Well, if you're not going to have somebody like
here you go.
It's hard to do. I see what you're saying. Yeah. But, I think they also go the other way, too, because, like, I think I can't think of the writer who's on the Uncanny X-Men right now. But, like, he was sort of building something new with the latest volume of Uncanny X-Men. And it started off kind of slow and not amazing, but I think it was starting to build into something really good.
Spectacular.
But they're going to cancel it and relaunch all the X-Men books.
Yeah, they're burning everything down for Hickman, right?
Yeah, and it's like, why the fuck? All right. I mean, we've been talking about Jonathan Hickman since before anybody fucking knew who Jonathan Hickman was. But I love the guy, but why the fuck are you giving him another chance to not finish something? Because how many times has he come up with some great idea for these mainstream books and it doesn't go anywhere? I mean, I think he's a very talented writer. I think he has amazing ideas, but I don't think he can fucking finish a story that makes any goddamn sense to anybody. I mean, so it's like, I just feel like this was one of those cases where the X-Men book, wasn't given enough time to kind of breathe, and now you're just going to go, well, we just need to fucking slash and burn and start over and probably do something. But now they're going to, it's who knows what it's going to be with Hickman, but I hope it's good. But I haven't read X-Men. I haven't read an X-Men book consistently in a long time, and I think it's Charles Soule, maybe, who's writing
Soleil.
Soleil, is that
Soul? Soleil?
I don't know.
Soleil.
But I really think he was building something interesting, and I think it's kind of a shame that they're just going to kind of cut it short and restart everything. But it is what it is. It is comics.
It is comics.
It'll break your heart.
It breaks your heart, kid. I haven't read an X book in a very long time, a ridiculously long time.
Maybe Grant Morrison's new X-Men. That might be.
Yes.
Last time I really was like, oh, what are they going to do? It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the X universe sort of just chugs along. And
it's that baggage. It's that same baggage, like we were talking with Swamp Thing, where it's like baggage of, okay, well, it's an X-Men book, so it has to be the angst of them being hunted and outcasts. That's all it always ends up being. And it's just like, okay, but we've seen that over and over and over again. How about something different maybe? I don't know. I mean, I know that's sort of the core of those characters, but I think the challenge then is this sort of how do you keep that but make it something fresh or something different?
What was X-Men? I always think of it as a soap opera was it really the comic that really took that soap opera kind of theme to it? Where, I mean, it was a superhero comic, but it was really a soap opera.
It was melodrama. I mean, I think it was definitely one of the first that, Claremont really leaned on that heavy melodrama, and just it was. I don't think anyone was dealing with those sort of, what am I going to do? My life is terrible, sort of thing.
What is she going to think of me if I, blah blah blah.
I mean, I think you had the Hulk, and to some degree, and you had Spider-Man to some degree was like that. But
I guess with Spider-Man, it was, I guess what Stan Lee said, he always wanted that decision of, I need to go to the south side of Manhattan to battle Doc Ock, or I had to go to the Upper East Side to get Amnesia's medicine.
But I think X-Men was the first one where you had a bunch of characters dealing with their own issues and interpersonal issues between them. You know what I mean? Like, they were dealing with, okay, we got to be superheroes, but we're also hated. And, like, one of us is in love with another one. One of us is a teenage girl. One of us is a immortal Canadian drunkard. And you know what I mean? So it was the first time where they're all dealing with the same issues, but they're also all dealing with their own individual issues. You didn't really have that, and I think that's why it's more of a soap opera, because in a soap opera you have all the different storylines that intermingle, but they're also individually dealing with their own shit. Where Spider-Man's dealing with his shit, the Hulk's dealing with his shit, but they're not, not
X-Men was a team book.
Yeah,
it was a team. Something that reminded me very much of the X-Men, a free comic book day book that I picked up. Humonoids is launching its own imprint called H1, and it's got some pretty good talent. Mark Waid seems to be the chief wrangler on this, and it's got John Cassaday, Carla Speed McNeil, Yannick Paquette, among others. Did either of you pick up the Ignition preview on Free Comic Book Day?
No, I didn't go to a comic book store on Free Comic Book Day.
It's get it on your radar whenever it comes out. Check it out. It definitely felt like a modern version of X-Men. It was emerging powers from people that have more or less like a mutant gene is kind of the feeling of it. And the Free Comic Book Day issue was a getting the band together or previewing of getting the band together. Beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous art, and Mark Waid wrote it, and he's pretty good. And so I'm looking forward to the humanoid stuff. I guess they have 2 or 3 different single issue series that are coming out, and then they're doing 3 or 4 different graphic novels under the imprint, and the graphic novels look pretty cool as well. Omni is one of them, Strange Lands, so Ignited. So it's a bunch of series coming out from H1. It's from Humonoids, basically. They've been doing awesome collected editions for a long time, which have been available domestically. But this is the first time I've seen them doing single issues and graphic novels.
Looks like you can actually read the Free Comic Book Day issue on their website for free. Mm-hmm. So if you want to go there and read it, you can read it. I'm checking it out right. Yeah, I was going to ask, because Humanoids, I always
they did a lot of
because it's sort of like an imprint company.
Yeah, they
some degree,
reprinted
right?
a bunch of the Jodorowsky and Mobius stuff. I mean, they did Inkall and I mean they're heavy into the Jodorowsky stuff, which cross pollinates with a lot of the Mobius stuff. So they've done a lot of European comics and then reprinted them for the English translations.
So this is sort of their own universe,
Their own
their own thing. Okay, cool.
Yeah. It looks like
universe.
It looks like Mark Waid and John Cassaday and a bunch of other creators.
Asayefo?
Yeah, I wasn't going to try and say that.
I think that's how you say it.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, you're a publisher. We're really talented people. It feels a little cross-gen to me. But,
okay.
You know what I mean?
Hey, cross-gen was the shit while it lasted.
CrossGen was fantastic.
Yeah.
And this feels a little bit of this is it's an imprint with some really good, talented creators, and we might get some good series out of it and some good, graphic novels.
Cool. Well, I'll check it out on their website here. It doesn't look pretty. I don't know who drew it. I'm trying to see who.
Is it Carlos B. McNeil on this one?
Let's see. Well, you were looking at the Ignited because they have
Ignition. It may have been Ignited. Is Ignition? Is that what they're doing? The overall, is that the umbrella title?
I think H1 is the umbrella.
Ignited.
And it's Ignited is the lives of 6 teenagers are changed forever when tragic chaos ensues at their high school. But the free comic book day one, I was just on it. And now I don't know where.
Yeah, it's Ignited is the kind of the flagship story. I think that's the Mark Waid one, and then Strangelands is one. Omni Meyer is a OGN, which looks pretty cool. So the big country is another OGN, and then they've got
Nick Nevin and the Bloody Queen.
Yeah, Nick Nevin and the Bloody Queen is the other one. So yeah, they've got it looks like a pretty interesting slate of titles coming out. So yeah, I like it's new. Here's the thing I like about it. They don't appear to be saying, "Hey, these are all screenplays."
Right.
They look like for comics, sake. Because there's been other companies that have launched. It's like they were so obviously begging to be adapted for film or TV. These look like real comics.
It looks like H1 is the shared universe. So that's that's whatever. I mean, H1. That's sort of the
humanoids.
Yeah, Metal Hurlant. 45 years.
H1.
H1. John Cassaday is the chief executive officer. Remember when I got drunk and almost started a fight with John Cassaday?
Because he stole your bike.
No. He stole Tim Seeley's
in your
bike.
Dream. Oh, he stole Tim Seeley's bike in your dream?
No. He stole Tim Seeley's bike in Tim Seeley's dream. He was just an asshole to me, but he wasn't really an asshole. I was just really drunk, and I was the asshole.
Right.
Like I'm here.
John Cassaday did nothing wrong to me or Tim Seeley, but he did nothing wrong. Just want to
occasionally you make me look so normal, Sal.
Yeah, well,
I love it.
I won't even tell you about. My wife, my poor wife, the things she puts up with. I recently called into a radio station and pretended to be someone I wasn't.
Because I
thought it would be funny, and it was, and it actually changed the course of the show for the day. I just thought it would be a funny bit.
Is that Boris and Bernstein?
No. No. It was the most ridiculous thing. It was just, and I was driving home from work, and I listen to this show all the time, and I just thought it would be funny. Like, I didn't think it would be funny that I was being someone else. I just thought if a guy called up from somewhere else and said this, it would be funny for the show, and so I did. I just pretended to be the person that
someone needs to do this.
Yeah, that was all it was. Someone needs to do this right now. It'd be funny. I'll do it, and I did. Yeah, it was. But that's kind of the weird mind that you're dealing with here. Sometimes I just do weird shit that doesn't, make a lot of sense.
Believe me, I know.
You're aware.
Oh yeah. I'm aware.
I can't explain it.
Mm-hmm. One of my other free comic book day finds that I wanted to mention, and this kind of goes back into the lore of Around Comics, and we got to meet a lot of really awesome people and awesome artists along the way, and some people that really grew and changed as artists. But there's probably one guy that I would say maybe more than anyone else grew, changed, and continued to blow us away, and that was Dave Wachter. Have you guys seen what he's been doing on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Yes, actually, I've been seeing the stuff that he's been posting.
So good,
yeah,
so good.
I agree for sure. He's done. He's really evolved, and his stuff of late on that book especially has been pretty awesome. So
it was. It came out for Free Comic Book Day, and I was like, I've got to check out more of Dave's stuff for TMNT, because that series has been going for like 30 fucking years now.
TMNT H1 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just all these these cool acronyms. TMNT.
TM H1Z Turtles.
Have fun. Get your fun. H1.
But it was cool to see him kind of find a home there, because he has his own style, which I absolutely appreciate, and it's been awesome to see him continue to grow and evolve as an artist, and I think he's kind of found a home with that title, and to kind of establish himself. So I hope that continues, and even after TMNT, he's able to he's able to continue to move on and do some other stuff. So, all right, well, I think that's got us for another month here. We got anything else to chit chat about, or any announcements?
H3. I'm coming out with a shared universe of comics called H3.
Come check out TK100.
Tom Cater's
Top
100.
The whole universe will only exist for 100 issues.
And then in 15 years, Warren Ellis will come and relaunch it.
After
a 100 number one issues.
It's 100 crisis. Every issue is a crisis.
In the TK100 universe, there are no issue number 2s.
Everyone dies every issue.
It's all number 1. It's a fresh start.
Every issue, the entire universe is destroyed.
Yeah.
And then the next issue.
You just described Around Comics. Every episode is a crisis.
Every episode. What's happening?
Everyone dies again.
All right. Well, guys, it was a pleasure as always to chit chat with you. Look forward to getting together again. We'll be back in a couple weeks. In the meantime,
in between time,
we'll be everywhere in
and around comics.
All right, I hear one of my children cry.
Oh God!
I hear one of my go.
Yeah.
Go take care of your child. All
All
right.
right, talk to you guys later.
Adios.
Comics.